Okay, my name is Dave, and I run the New York Flying Club on VATSIM. I'm going to be working with this Flight 1 Cardinal, one of my favorite aircraft here. Shut the doors, and I'm going to give you a little tip here. Control Z was going to bring up that text. See the red text up there? That red text was going to give me, on the very right-hand side, the wind speed and direction as it is happening. And I'll give you a couple more pointers here as I start up the aircraft and do my run-up. The most important thing to remember while you're doing the pattern work is to know the pattern. The pattern here at Farmingdale Republic is 1,100 feet. We're going to be making left-hand traffic here, and that's about all you need to know for the moment. The next thing you need to know is your aircraft. Best climb for this Cardinal is 70 knots. Maximum flap extension speed is 90 knots. A little bit faster than the regular Cessna. This gives me 20 knots to play with as far as my climb speed and the speed I need to be at to drop flaps. So this is what I'm going to be keeping in mind as I do my climb. I'm going to climb out at 70, maybe a little bit faster just to keep the nose down so I can look out for traffic. And I'm going to make sure that whatever I do, I don't go over 90 knots. So it is because I'm going to be dropping a notch of flaps on the downwind. I'm going to take note of where those speeds are on the airspeed indicator so I can find them at a glance. Okay, and as we get lined up, position and hold, we do the lights, camera, action check. Check that we have the lights on, rotating beacon, strobe, etc. Camera is the transponder. This allows air traffic control to see you and your altitude. Remember lights, camera, and action, and you'll never forget to squawk mode C. Action is advance to throttle and take off, and I'm looking for 50 knots to rotate. VR rotate speed is 50 knots, and there we are, rotated and taken off. Notice I didn't yank back on that. At a very low speed, a very high angle of attack by yanking back is going to put you right in the stall range. So right now I've adjusted my pitch angle to give me 70 knots. That's all you need to do. You're at full throttle. There's nothing the throttle's going to do for you except give you full power. The only way to get that 70 knots is to adjust your pitch. I'm looking off to the left here to see if there's any more traffic on the left pattern, and I'm looking to the rear because, look at that, I'm not tracking straight out. So I'm going to make a slight, and I mean slight, turn to get me back online. I wasn't that far off, not panicking at all, just straightening out my climb out here as I'm getting to about 700 feet. That's where they want you to make your turns, unless the tower requests otherwise. Now, making a 90-degree turn. In a high-wing aircraft, you can't see as you're making the turn. So I'm using that road as a guide. That road is about 90 degrees off from the end of from the center line of the runway. And as I'm looking down there, with just going to turn until I get lined up with that road. Pretty good gauge. And as I get to it, I'm going to look down at my gyro compass to confirm that I am indeed 90 degrees from the center line. Next, I'm going to mark out the next left-hand turn. That's that point where the difference in the terrain is over there. See it just there past the left wing. And this part is where a lot of people get hung up. We're making our turn to the downwind now. We're glancing back at the instruments. We'll do a quick freeze here. And a quick glance, I see what's wrong. What's wrong in this case is I'm at 1,400 feet and climbing. I've got an uncoordinated turn. I'm at about 70 knots, and my throttle, the RPM, is down at around 1,600 RPM. What I'm going to do now is do what I need to get at pattern altitude and remain at the proper speed to deploy my flaps. And you see I have a descent there, and I'm picking up a little bit of speed. I'm at about 80 knots. But I'm not looking at my heading indicator because I've got that point outside as a perfect gauge for when I'm doing my downwind. Okay, I know I'm at the proper speed and altitude now. Now I'm making sure I'm flying a parallel course to the runway, because for all of this, the worst thing that could happen is a mid-air collision. And I'm moving off to the right now just to parallel. You can see just by looking at the runway pretty much if you're parallel to it or not. And I call that a midfield downwind to tower, and I start looking for the proper point in which I'm going to start descending. Wow, and that time is now. Good thing we got ourselves set up in time. Comes fast, doesn't it? All right, lined up with the end of the runway threshold, not the end of the runway, but the threshold, we start our descent. And we're going to be doing a turn to base once the threshold becomes at a 45-degree angle to the left rear of the aircraft. So I'm going to be looking down there to see if I'm lined up yet. I've got my descent going, not descending as fast as I should be, but I'm still maintaining a parallel course to the runway, and looks like we're ready to turn. Okay, look off to the left there to give me a reference, a 90-degree reference. Look at those buildings right at the wing there. Perfect. All right, I'm going to keep turning until I see those buildings right in front of me. This allows me to keep my eyes outside. I'm looking out to see if there's any aircraft approaching. I've also got a good view of my descent, my altitude. Oh, look at that. I'm actually getting the ball lined up there. Look at that. Oh, there's the buildings. All right, let's straighten out. I've used the ground reference, an outside reference, to keep me VFR. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It's 90 degrees to me. And put the second notch of flaps in, waiting for the nose to come up and pushing slightly down so I don't float. But notice what's happened by my doing this whole process. Look how stable I am now. I've got nothing to worry about except make sure that my airspeed is correct, that I'm descending at a proper rate, and that I've got, plenty of time to do what I need to, looking for traffic, because you still have to do that even at this point. And, even with all of that wonderful stuff, I still managed to turn in just a little too early here. Oh, look at that. Straighten up here. Straightening up like that basically has a less dramatic effect than making a right turn, making a left turn, making a right turn, making a left turn to get lined up. I just straightened up. As soon as I realized that I was too far over, I just straightened up a little bit, and I'm looking to just intercept the extended center line there. See how calmly I am just eventually lining up on it. I want to make sure that I line up far enough away that I can start, thinking about my final approach, but I also don't want to be going left, right, left, right. Okay, now we look down there, we see that we're pretty much lined up, and I'm looking at my airspeed, and I want to put that last notch of flaps in soon enough so I don't upset. Look what happens. I drop the flaps and the nose comes up. That little maneuver puts me at a slightly high on it's going to the VASI, but to be quite honest, I'm not looking at the VASI at this point. I'm looking at my airspeed, the most important thing, and my aiming point, which is between the threshold lines and the aiming points for the IFR, right in the middle of it. So I'm not particularly caring that those are all red right now. I'm just worried about making the runway, and I do. And I'm at 65 knots with the throttle cut and pull back and touch main first. Okay, we'll take another quick look at that. Notice not really a change in pitch here at all until right about there. It's a very gradual change in pitch, and I'm also gradually pulling the throttle back. And, if you go back and look at where I was noticing all four red VASI lights, if I had done anything to adjust for that, such as advance the throttle to try and pick up a little bit, to pull back to try and make the, end of the runway, I would have really upset that touchdown. Just because of the four red lights on final. There was really nothing wrong with that at that point. So I just, watch the runway and leave the VASI for the people on IFR approach. Okay, now, for those paying attention, you know that the next time I go around, I'm going to be thinking about making a coordinated turn for once. Because obviously I can't make one to save my life. The other thing would be working on when I'm turning towards final, why that didn't work out. But for the most part, I'm satisfied with my being able to hold a square pattern, and that's it. That was a quick trip around the pattern. Hope you learned something from it. I know it went pretty quick. Feel free to watch it again and again. Post your comments here and join our club. We'd love to have you.